In today's take, I want to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. And I want to talk about the challenges they're going to face in regards to their upcoming schedule going forward in the season. Now, before we get into that, though, please like, subscribe, also hit the notification bell, just so you get the newest and the bonus content first. We put out content every day, so you won't miss any content here. Let's just go ahead and jump right into this. So, the Clippers, their next 5 games I spoke about yesterday's video. I talked about in regards to the next 5 games. And, I know I said I'm going to pay attention to their next 5 games. I know I'm going to pay attention to it, heavily to see exactly, how they fare in those games. But when I look a little bit further than the next 5, including the next 5, when you look at their schedule, it's not really who they have to play. Of course, they're going to play some challenging teams, but it's more so now in the upcoming schedule within the next week or two, the Clippers are going to find themselves in some road games. And there's a couple tough ones there that I see because they play the Warriors. I believe they play the Sacramento Kings. And then they play against the Lakers, even though that's technically like a home game, but it'll be a Lakers crowd. So it's like a Lakers home game. It's like a away game for the Clippers. So this is what I'm saying. The challenges that I see for the Clippers coming up is them going on the road. And the reason why I say that going on the road is going to be a challenge for them because we all know the Clippers have a tendency to lag sometime. And I've said it on many of my videos and I'll continue to say it until they correct it. The Clippers sometime go into games and they lag and they don't play up to their potential. And they've been a victim of that on several occasions. Even with Kawhi Leonard last year, they were a victim of that. And this is something that they can't afford to do this year. When they're playing on the road as the away team, there is no crowd. There's nobody behind you. There's nobody backing you. And you have to be at your best. Paul George can't shoot 10 for 29 on the road. Reggie Jackson can't shoot 9 for 23 on the road. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to beat teams like that. And you're going to find yourself in games against the lower seeded teams like the Pelicans. I think they play them coming up sometime soon. But you'll find yourself playing a team like the Pelicans and it's a tie game in the fourth quarter with like 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter because you're being inefficient on the offensive end. And that's what gets you beat in this league. And maybe not by the lower seeded teams like that, but sometimes the lower seeded teams can surprise you and knock you off. And that's just the way it is. So my thing with the Clippers is they need to find a way to generate the same energy they get at home and allow it to follow them on the road. Because to me, I always said, if you're going to be a good team in this league, if you're going to be a great team or good team or a team that's formidable or a team that's looked at as a contender, you've got to be a good road team along with being a good home team. And you got to be a good road team in regards to this. I don't mean be a good road team in regards to if your schedule hypothetically, if your schedule for the next 5 games is the Pelicans, the Cleveland Cavaliers twice, the maybe let's see a team else is struggling. Maybe the Celtics, even though they do have Jason Tatum, I'm not going to throw the Celtics in there. Let's just say the Pelicans, you play the Cleveland Cavaliers twice, you play the Thunder twice, and you play a team like Minnesota. I'm not talking about if you have 5 road games like that, because bare minimum, you should go 4-1 if you're the Clippers. I'm talking about when you have a 5-game road stretch where you play the first game, you play a team like the Thunder, then you play the Lakers twice back to back or something like that. Even though they're struggling, the Lakers are going to get up for the Clippers. That's just the way it is. They're going to get up for the Clippers and they're going to give the Clippers everything they can handle. I mean, honestly, the Lakers can struggle all they want, but when they play Clip City, they're going to give them everything they can handle. And that's just the way it is. I mean, same thing with the Clippers. The Clippers are going to give the Lakers all they can handle because it's the Lakers. You see what I'm saying? So, but my point is, let's say the 5-game road trip is the first game is against the Thunder, the next 2 is against the Lakers, then you got 1 against the Warriors, then 1 against the Nets, and then you got 1 against the Bucks. Let's say their schedule, their road schedule is something like that. They can find themselves down. They can go 1-4 in that road trip possibly. You see what I'm saying? And that's something that the Clippers don't want to fall in. And this is where the challenge is going to start to come for the Clippers. Now they're going to have some home games in between here in the next couple weeks, but they're also going to have some crucial road games. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly how the Clippers fare in the road games because they've been playing at home predominantly, most of this season so far. I mean, they've pretty much had one of the most favorable schedules this season. And that's not a knock on the Clippers at all, because you got to play the schedule that's given to you. And that's definitely a fair assessment. But at the same time, people really personify you and judge you off of your schedule when it gets a little tougher, when you have to go on the road on a 4 or 5 game road trip, back-to-back nights, when you have to play really good teams. And how are you going to fare then? It can't always be the excuse of, oh, well, I'm fatigued or we're fatigued and, my legs, I didn't have my legs under me. It can't always be an excuse like that, because every other team goes through the same thing. But it's a reason why, teams at the end of the season have a number 1 record or number 2 record or number 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that, is because they went through the same struggle you did and they found a way through it, and they found a way to beat good teams on the road, even though they're under immense pressure, and found a way to come through. And they did it shooting very efficiently. And that's something that the Clippers are going to have to work on. You can't go in games because you got more talent and you got a better team overall than the other team and just take them lightly and kind of play casually, because playing casually will get you beat. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think tomorrow they go against the Memphis Grizzlies. That's a good road test for them, because now Paul George is going to see Ja Morant once again, and Ja Morant at home is going to try to, put up 40 points. I can already know that. He's definitely going to try to do his thing. And, if he gets contribution from other players, on that team, and they get the crowd going behind them, who knows what'll happen in that game. And I believe the Clippers, definitely will win that game. I believe they will. But if they come out lagging and stalling and, sleepwalking the first 2 quarters, and don't get it together, I think they'll get beat. You see what I'm saying? And it's like the Clippers have tendencies of doing that. And I always said that's a bad habit to have. You can't go in games and take teams lightly because you have the better team, or you think you have the better team. It's not about who has the better team. It's about who shows up that night. It's about who wants to win. It's about who's hungrier. And to me, the Clippers have to have that mentality and take that on the road. You're not going to have all home games. You're not going to have the games where the crowd is behind you 99% of the time. You're going to have games where you have to go on the road and you have to execute plays at a high level because you're getting paid high dollars. And that's just the way it is. I don't want to see Paul George or Reggie Jackson go on the road or on a few game road trip and shoot piss poor from the field, but have 35 points on the stat sheet. And, Reggie Jackson has 26 points and they lose by double digits. I don't want to see stuff like that, because that tells me they're not playing how they're supposed to, and they're not where they're supposed to be. And it shows more and more the reason why they need Kawhi Leonard. I've said before, you could say it now. They need Kawhi Leonard now, if you ask me, because like I said, the schedule has been really favorable for them. And they've had more home games than they've had away games. And that's actually a good thing for the Clippers. And I'm glad they had that. But I'm just saying, when you look at teams like the Warriors last night, the way they're playing, you got to factor in the Lakers, because, the Lakers get up for the Clippers and vice versa. So you got to factor that in. Even though the Nets lost last night, they're going to be there in the end. The Bucks are good. They're going to be there. Look at all the other teams that are like either good or have more star power or ascending. And like I said, when you look at a team like the Warriors, they don't even have Klay Thompson, and they still have the best record in the league. You see what I'm saying? So it's like there's other teams that are shorthanded. There's other teams who are missing players. There's other teams who have issues just like the Clippers do, but they play with a sense of urgency a lot better, and they play more together. When you watch the Clippers play, it's more one-on-one basketball. It's more, take turn basketball. Reggie take a shot, Paul George take a shot. And it's like, it doesn't look like they're playing with a lot of ball movement and camaraderie the way I feel like they should be, because they played together last year. They played together and went through adversity. To me, when I watched them play, they played good enough to beat a lot of the sorry teams. But my question is, are they going to play good enough to beat the really good teams, especially when the Clippers are the away team? See, you beat a Miami team a few nights ago. That's great. You did beat them without Jimmy Butler, though. And it was at home. It was in LA. Now, what happens in that game if it's in Miami and they're up by 17, 18 points? Do you come back and win that game? It's possible, but it's not likely, because when you have your main star, Paul George, not shooting the best from the field, sometimes that trickles down to the other players. And this is the reason why I said they need Kawhi Leonard back ASAP, because Kawhi Leonard is an efficient type shooter. He is an efficient type scorer. Kawhi Leonard takes shots within his means, and he doesn't try to overdo it unless he has to. But when he does have to put in a little extra overtime and overdo it, he comes up with 45 plus points a game in a game where they need it the most, and knock off a team like Dallas, which probably should have beat them last year, or who probably should have beat them last year in regards to the playoffs. And this is what I'm talking about. You need efficiency on the road. You need chemistry on the road. You could do a lot of things at home and get away with it because you got the crowd. And once the crowd gets into it, sometimes that deters a lot of teams from actually gaining their momentum and their rhythm, because the crowd is keeping them out of it. And this is what I'm saying. When you go on the road, you have to channel that energy that you had at home and do the same thing on the road. And that's something that the Clippers have always struggled with. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think the Clippers, might be able to go on the road this year and surprise some people and get some big wins. But that's only if they come out with the right mentality. And that's only if they're going to, rotate the ball more, get more ball movement. Because if the Clippers don't move the ball the way they should, they're going to get beat by a lot of teams that they shouldn't lose to. Now, like I said, they're so immensely talented, they will go on 4 or 5 game winning streaks during the season, and that's good. But if they're predominantly only against teams that are under 500, that won't be good. So, like I said, these next 5 games, I'm going to pay attention to. They played the Dallas Mavericks twice. They played Memphis. I believe they play the Pelicans. That should be an easy win. And even still, playing these next few games, like I said, they have to go 3-2 these next 5 games. And then they start taking it on. They start having some more road games after that. So we're really going to see, what the team is made of and how they're built. And I think they're built to, do some good things this season. I really do. And I really hope that they do. But what I'm seeing in some of these games, even some of the wins they had, is concerning, because it's just not good enough to beat those type teams like the Warriors and, the Nets and the Bucks and, teams like that, the Bulls. It's not good enough to beat those type teams. And when you're playing those type teams with that type of firepower and that type of whatever that they have, you have got to show up and you have got to show out and you have got to be efficient. And to me, like I said, that's where they miss Kawhi Leonard the most, because one thing about Kawhi, as I said before, he is very efficient in how he scores, and he goes about his business the right way. And what I mean by the right way is when he sees that the other team has superstardom on there, Kawhi Leonard is definitely taking selective shots within his means, shots that he shoots at a high percentage, at a high clip, and get to his spots and don't let nobody deter him from doing what he likes to do best on the court. Sometimes when I see the Clippers without him, with Reggie and Paul George and a couple others, even though some of them are playing out of position a little bit because Kawhi isn't there, they still take ill-advised shots at times when I don't think they need to. When they're down by 2 points sometime in a game and a team that went on an 8-0 run, you don't need to take a 3-pointer to take the lead. You can take an easy 2-point shot, feed it in the paint, get somebody slashed into the basket and tie the game up and let your offense, flow that way, and take threes when they're given and when they're high percentage. And that's something that I put that on Ty Lue. Ty Lue has to be responsible for that. He has to take care of that. He has to push these guys to play that way and have that mentality. Shout out to Ty Lue, though, on one thing I will give him. He played Brandon Boston last night some minutes. I thought that was really good. He had like 13 points in 20 minutes. So I definitely think he showed Ty Lue he has some type of capability of being a versatile player in their offense. So I hope Ty Lue implements him more. But that's something that what I was saying, back to the point, that's something that I think Ty Lue needs to implement. You guys have to be more efficient when we take it on the road. These home games are really good, but that's in your favor because you're at home and the schedule favors you. But when the schedule doesn't favor you and you got to go on the road and play against a team like the Bulls at Chicago, play against a team like the Nets at home, play against a team like the Warriors at home, play against a team like maybe the Lakers at home or whatever, it gets tougher. And, and And a lot of people, you have to understand, a lot of people, a lot of analysts, a lot of NBA fans, they don't judge teams off 6-7 game win streaks, 9-10 game win streaks when the schedule has been very favorable in your favor. A lot of people don't even judge you off that. Like the Clippers were on a 7-game winning streak, and honestly, it really wasn't, nobody was really talking about it. I mean, I think I heard a little bit about their 7-game winning streak on First Things First, with Nick Wright and them. I mean, honestly, Skip and Shannon didn't even talk about their 7-game win streak. It wasn't even a topic. And you see what I'm talking about? A lot of people don't care when you play a favorable schedule. They only care when you do stuff like that, when you went through like a 7-game stretch where you played 2 bad teams and the other 5 teams were above 500 and really, really competitive teams. That's when people really talk about your 7-8 game win streak. And this is what I'm saying. The Clippers need to go on one of those win streaks where they can go on the road and implement their habits and take over games and at least play more efficient and play more within their means. And don't play this take-turn basketball and isolation basketball, because isolation basketball gets you beat unless you got a top 5 player in the league. Paul George is not a top 5 player in the league. They're missing their top 5 talent player in the league. So you don't have that type of player who can just play ISO basketball and turn into Michael Jordan and just take teams home. That's Kawhi Leonard's job. Paul George is good. Paul George can do that at times, but he can't do it consistently enough. That's the reason why a lot of times when you look at the stat sheet, Paul George will have 35 points, but he beat and shot 10 for 25, 10 for 29, 11 for 28. You see what I'm saying? 12 for 30. You see what I'm talking about? It doesn't matter how many points you have at the end. It also matters about your efficiency, how you shot, and how you affected the game. And don't get me wrong, I like Paul George. I'm not knocking Paul George because this season I think he's done, a fairly good job. But what I'm saying is everybody has a level of expectation and everybody can be better. Just because you did good don't mean you couldn't have done better. And my biggest knock on Paul George the last couple years has been his efficiency in shooting. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's really off. And when he's off, it's almost like he doesn't even help the team win. It's almost like when Paul George is off, he doesn't play on the defensive end. And that's something that you never see from Kawhi Leonard. And it's like when Kawhi Leonard's off with his jump shot, he becomes more aggressive and try to drive to the paint. And try to really, really put teams on their heels defensively by putting pressure on them, by getting them in foul trouble, drawing fouls, going to the free throw line, and making stellar defensive plays. And that's not something Paul George does consistently. When Paul George jump shot is off, it's like his defense is not there. It's like he forgets how to play defense unless his jump shot is falling. And I just don't understand that about Paul George, which is specifically the reason why a lot of people criticize Paul George, because when you look at his talent and how good he is and how big of a player he is 6'7", 6'8". He should be way more aggressive against some of these teams. Not standing there shooting threes and jumpers and step back isolation plays. Yeah, that's okay when they're falling, but when they don't fall and when teams are really guarding you and really putting defense on you and you're sitting there taking ill-advised jumpers and putting your team in jeopardy of losing games, whereas you guys should be up by double digits on a lot of these teams, it makes it harder on the Clippers. Now, like I said, I'm not, discrediting them or anything like that, because I'm pulling for them. I'm pulling for them to do what they have to do to get through the season, and hopefully they get Kawhi and Serge back and the rest of the crew back, and they can make a run at this thing. But they're only going to be as good as every player on their roster is. And if every player on their roster doesn't understand their role or is not going to be as efficient as possible in playing their role, well, the same result will end up every year. That's the same. They'll get the same result they had every year as a Clipper organization, which is not winning a championship, even with Kawhi Leonard. And there's a lot of people who think they're not going to win a championship, even with the expertise of Kawhi Leonard. And that could be just because of Paul George, or that could be just because of who the team is. I'm not sure. But my thing is, in what I see, I need to see more efficiency from this team shooting wise. And I need to see them go out there and mimic some of these habits that they did at home on the road against better competition. I definitely think the Clippers are going to beat some good teams, but I need to see them go out there and implement the same diet against every team. Every team gets the same business. Every team gets the same from the Clippers. The Clippers give 110% on both ends of the floor. and they take care of business when they need to. Not play down to your competition when you play a lowly seeded team, and then try to get up and play for your competition when you play a really good team. That's how you get beat in this league, because you're picking and choosing when you really want to show your talent rather than do it consistently every night, no matter who the opponent is. That's what championship teams do. They give the same amount of energy, effort, everything against every team, not just certain ones. And that's another thing the Clippers have definitely been a victim of. They play down to their competition. So like I said, tomorrow is starting their test. They're on the road. Big road game for them against John Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies, who are waiting on them. And we'll see exactly how that goes. I'll give my prediction on that game, when it starts and everything. But yeah, these next couple weeks is going to be crucial for the Clippers. They're going to start having some road games. They're going to have some road games against some, talented teams. And I want to see how the Clippers fare. If the Clippers come out of it, and have a winning record, I'll be more than satisfied. But if they don't come out of it with a winning record and they don't play the way they're supposed to, see, it's one thing if you lose. But it's one thing if you lose badly and don't play up to your capabilities. That's two different things. And there's a lot of games I see the Clippers are not playing up to their capabilities. They're just not doing it. Honestly, I think, like I said, even in some of the wins that they had against some of those lowly seeded teams, there were times in the game where I'm like, why is this team going on a 12-15-0 run when you have all the momentum and you're at home and you got better players and you got the better star player in Paul George on your side, and you're allowing teams to come back because you're just shooting jumper after jumper and you missed like 8 jumpers in a row. Now all of a sudden the game is tied. But why keep taking 8 jumpers in a row? After the first 2 or 3 jumpers that don't go in, why not be more aggressive and go to the paint? And this is something that the Clippers are going to have to learn from. You got to be aggressive on the road. You got to be aggressive against the better competition, good teams, and you have to be efficient in scoring against the better teams and when you play on the road against any team. And these are the things Ty Lue's going to have to implement to the team, but he's also going to have to get it in his diet so he can teach them to do it, because Kawhi Leonard knows it. Serge Ibaka knows it. When Rondo was there, he knew that, because those guys won championships as players. Now, Ty Lue won a championship as a player, but it was because of Shaq and Kobe. It wasn't because of him. He really didn't even contribute. He had a couple big threes in the finals, but before the NBA finals, didn't nobody even know who Ty Lue was as a player. So this is what I'm saying. There's guys in your locker room that knows what it takes to win and be the best or be at your best. But there's a lot of guys in your locker room who don't. So you have to lead these men the right way and implement and teach them the right things so they could become the type of player or win championships like Kawhi and Serge Ibaka and other players on that team. But hey, that's my take on the situation. Leave any comments in the comment section as always and let me know what you think. And hey, Khaliis out.